So there's four of us in this presentation, and we're gonna all try to go pretty quick. But what I basically want to really focus on here is it can be pretty difficult to grow seed crops in the Southeast. How do you?
There's also a remote answer.
Okay. I'll just share. It can be pretty difficult to grow seed crops in the Southeast. So why are we trying to grow seed crops in the Southeast? And basically, what I want to say is that the same reasons that it's difficult are the reasons that it's essential. So this is a tomato seed crop that has really bad septoria and early blight on it. This is me giving a farm tour and realizing that I had a really bad downy mildew in my cucumber seed crop. This was about 8 years ago. And that was before I started working on downy mildew, and I was wondering what it was, wondering what I was supposed to do about it. Those have already, kind of set seed, and I did get some seed out of it, but it wasn't a very good crop. So what are the challenges for Southeast seed production? Unpredictable rainfall. Basically, with dry seed harvests out in Oregon, you've got a whole 6 months of dry weather. So you know that when you're harvesting your beet seed or your lettuce seed, they're not going to be getting rained on. But we don't have that here. It can rain at any time. So high heat can impact pollination and fruit set. It can damage some seeds during processing. I've had that happen with tomato seeds. When you're doing ferments and it's like 95 degrees out, I'm pretty sure it's impacted germination. High heat and humidity are not good for seed drying and seed storage. And then the last one is the biggest one, is that our climate is conducive to a lot of kinds of disease and pest pressures. And that's, maybe the biggest thing that can make farming difficult in the Southeast and can make seed production difficult in the Southeast. So again, why are we doing this anyway? It's important to grow food regionally for food sovereignty and seed sovereignty, and the Southeast has a lot of strengths agriculturally, like lots of water, long warm seasons. Seed work, seed movement, seed networks from other regions aren't going to fix our problems. They're not going to, when I started noticing the downy mildew problems in 2009 and 2010, it wasn't on the radar of northern seed companies at all at that point. Now it is. But just if we want seeds that work for the Southeast, we have to do it in the Southeast. These are just some pictures of seed growing on our farm. I wanted to point out this crop is cowpeas, and we haven't grown it in a few years, but when we do, we pick it by hand, and that has to do with the rainfall, because if the cowpeas get rained on a couple times, they're not going to have good seed. So it's a very adapted, very healthy crop. But if you're growing it in the Southwest, you might have a much easier time going through with a combine than we would. So this is an example of a challenge. There's some okra. Okra is very good to produce in the Southeast. Doesn't have much disease, and it holds up to being rained on in the seed stage. Chris is going to talk more about crops in the Southeast that just don't have many problems at all, and how we could look at maybe growing more of those. Ira's going to talk some about that too. This is just a happy harvest, some peppers. So this is basically the same slide that I had before, but with some ideas for solutions. What do we do about unpredictable rainfall? We get out there and harvest often, with the cowpeas or the beans. You might be out there harvesting twice a week if it's rainy. You can use high tunnels for some crops. Obviously, that's not going to work if you're, with grain crops or corn, but it can work for some things. I've done it with lettuce with some success. You can also select for plants that can handle rain at the seed stage, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of collards are in this category. They can handle hot, humid, rainy weather even during the seed stage. So selection is a huge tool. High heat impacting pollination and fruit set. Again, you can select for heat-tolerant plants. Maybe there's crop timing that you can avoid some of the problems. Southeast is also a diverse region. You can grow some of those kinds of plants in the mountains. So in terms of seed drying and storage, we have I have a solution that's pretty easy that we use on our farm. I'm just going to show you. This is a small seed drying room that has a dehumidifier and an air conditioner, and then it has these seed drying racks with fans. But that combination of dehumidifier and air conditioner gives us a pretty good climate to dry the seeds. And I'm really interested to see what other people do. But I just wanted to share that. So, that's a challenge that I think can be pretty easily overcome, at least on a smaller scale. If you're talking about grain harvests, you're not going to be able to dry it in a room like this. And then the last one, high heat and humidity and lack of cold winters leading to a lot of pests and diseases. How do we solve that? How do we deal with that? And my answer is that we need a comprehensive Southeast seed system with all the things that go along with that. So doing seed production in the Southeast instead of out in Colorado or Oregon will allow over the generations for crops that are selected for the challenges that we face. Trials. There's a lot of stuff out there to try, some of it from within the region, some of it from outside of the region. We just need to really be trying stuff and sharing that information, because that's how we're going to have stuff that works well for us here. And then breeding, taking the stuff that we find in trials and making new varieties that work well. And again, the information sharing and the networking is also a crucial piece of that. Preservation, so having access to genetic material that, and this includes heirlooms that are being saved and maintained in the Southeast, from the Southeast, but also outside of the region. I really, when you said that earlier about a lot of things that used to grow well in Tennessee don't anymore. So saving stuff from the region that I think still has a lot of potential to have some of the traits we need, even in terms of disease resistance, but also bringing material in from other regions. And then the last one I have is maybe there's some types of seeds that we don't always have to grow in the Southeast, but if we have sort of an anchor in the Southeast of the trialing and the breeding and the distribution and the communication, when we grow, when seed crops are grown out in Oregon, but they're linked directly to the Southeast, it can be a good way to have a seed system be functional for some crops like spinach or carrots that are hard to grow in our region. Ideally, I'd love to be able to grow every kind of seed in the region. Okay, yeah, that's me looking at the downy mildew problem again.
Really hard.
Yeah, but I wanted to show So I started doing downy mildew trialing and then breeding, and so the next few slides are going to be from that, just like the power of trialing and breeding on coming up with things that work. So this is a trial we did last year, a downy mildew focused cucumber trial, and these are all pictures taken at the end of August of 2018. So this is a variety called Sumter. It was dead from downy mildew at that point. It's Marketmore 76, doesn't look much better. I also want to point out, like, in terms of climatic factors and the contribution of climate change to our challenges, Marketmore 76 used to be resistant, and the disease, downy mildew, mutated so that it now formerly resistant varieties aren't resistant anymore. That in combination with downy mildew actually blows north on the wind every year from Florida, and it's been blowing a lot further north. So it was unheard of in northern New England, even 7 or 8 years ago, and now they're getting it. And then, okay, so you got dead ones, and then this is a variety that we found from China that had some resistance. There was a trial done by Todd Wayner at NC State, I think, and I got an idea of some varieties to try out on our trials, and this was one that I liked. And then this is another one that I found that had better downy mildew resistance. And that's a cross between those two varieties plus a third variety. And this is some downy mildew resistant material from Cornell, where they're also working on that problem. So it's just, those slides are just to show the power of trialing and breeding. And before I get to I'll go to the next slide, but seed-borne diseases is a huge topic that we especially have to be careful about. Before I get into this, I want to ask people what their biggest pest and disease challenges are and write them down, because I really want to know what people are seeing and what we really need to focus on and get together to work on.
So what was your question? Can you ask that question?
What are the biggest pest and disease challenges that people are facing with the crops?
So what I was going to say is, for instance, at our farm, we just found out that we are actually flipping our growing season. So this May, we hit 107 degrees for like a week. Never could we ever hit that high of a temperature in May. And it was just crazy. All summer, it was crazy. Rainy, everything. So going into 2020, we are now growing September to April. Anything that's in the ground that can grow, God can do whatever He wants to do. But we've learned that we have to stop trying to fight Mother Nature. Like, we're consistently trying to come up with a new way to fight her, and she's like, "Oh, that's cute." You know what I'm saying? It's like a parent. So for like those of you that are homeschooling, I know you get what I'm saying. You get this system down with your child, and the child is like doing great, and all of a sudden off the rails, right? In the same way with parents that send their kids to public schools, you got everything going great, and then everything's off the rails all of a sudden, right? And both of y'all are schooling correctly, right, according to what your value systems are, but you're forgetting that this child is going to go off the rails no matter what. And you're going to reel it back in no matter what. And Mother Nature is consistently reeling us back in by letting us know that we are not in control. And some of what we're saying right now is we want to be in control. We're trying to say that we want to control what happens, and we can't. Every time we get to the point to control it, something else pops up or becomes bigger. And I think we need to start thinking about Mother Nature as working with her, having the conversation with her, So, because we know that we have hurricane season, and for us, the last 4 hurricanes that have come through have hit us in coastal Georgia in some shape, form, or fashion, so we can't grow the same during those months. So I think that that's something to think about.
Yeah, so maybe it's more understanding Mother Nature and acknowledging, and then using risk management practices to succeed, understanding what's going to happen. So if
Right.
we know this is what the temperatures are becoming, this is what, now when we start our seed, like you say, flip things on their
Good
head.
things on the
It's
set.
working with, not fighting it.
Not
because
fighting.
You can't win.
Can't win.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think we also have a tendency to try to grow things we see other people in other parts of the
Say
country.
it,
Yeah.
say it.
I mean, summer, these tomatoes, summer squash, so trying to go with what grows here and eating it,
Mhm.
Yeah.
instead of trying to have a diet that every, local
Yeah.
pork had or something.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been in St. Louis, Missouri for the last 6 months, and watching how they're growing things like squash and okra and those kinds of things as compared to what, like they don't have, like, they didn't even put anything in the ground to damn near May,
Yeah.
right? Whereas in most of us in the Southeast, we've had things in the ground. I know we have things in the ground starting in February, right? They didn't start till May. That's a huge gap. So why are we trying to grow the same geographies like everybody else?
Our summers are like.
And we're,
Or like a winter?
and
right?
we're in Virginia, so, like, we have a lot of similar challenges to you all, but we have not nearly as long of a hot season either.
Right.
Well, and I think that also gets into a much deeper conversation around, because, we've been having this conversation around, like, what are seeds that we're saving for ourselves and our own farms, and what are the seeds that we're growing for other companies? And I see this at Seed Savers Exchange too, because, for us, it's all about, how can we make sure that we're preserving, historically relevant seeds and all of that kind of stuff. But if we're talking about, growing seeds commercially, how can we change what seed growers, may be being asked to grow? And, it's the same thing like when we're working with farmers, restaurants to farmers, and you have your restaurateurs that are like, well, we want this, and this is what, the market is calling for, versus a farmer that's like, hey, here's what grows really well, you should try to find some ways to incorporate this into your menu. And so I think the question is like, who's wagging who in that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that could kind of get to some of those conversations around like, what are we growing? What is the Southeast best suited? And what that may look like on our farm, which is zone 9A with a silty sandy loam, versus middle Georgia, where I think right now, is there a freeze that's happening right now, or is that more on the Atlanta side?
Well, I wasn't there last night, but
Okay.
we're pretty close, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Right, and we still were at 80,
Yeah.
87 degrees.
Oh.
So, it's like, that's a huge.
Yeah, and then you get up here where you're almost up to the mid-Atlantic region, so.
I'm supposed to only have like 10 to 15 minutes before I hand it up. So I want to, I'm
killed
probably
that,
over
sorry.
now. But real quick, just like pests and diseases, and then I'm just going to go through the seaborne diseases and then hand it off. And then hopefully we'll have more time to talk about all this broader stuff later, because I think it's really important discussion.
So hands, any pest or disease issues you want to raise for us to capture? Yes?
Yeah.
Bacterial leaf spot.
Okay.
Oh,
Peppers.
Bacterial leaf spot in peppers.
peppers?
So we have harlequin bug issues in the middle of the season, and I think we may have come up with some solutions to that. And then we have terrible downhill issues in pretty much all cucurbits starting in July. And of course, in some seasons, the wetter winters, we have some brassic bacterial issues.
Okay, other diseases, we've got downy mildew, we've got bacterial leaf spot. Any
Harlequin
other
bugs.
What's that?
We're doing diseases and pests.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and pests.
Stink bugs and rust.
Stink bugs? The brown marmorated or just in general? Stink bugs. Just paint them all, right? And rust? Okay, others? Pests?
Squash bugs.
Number beetles.
Mexican bean beetles.
Potato beetles, Mexican bean beetles, aphids. We could spend hours on this.
All pests.
Yeah, hopefully we're gonna be able, but I wanna have a list of what, anyway.
I resonate a lot with this other.
Come up and add to the list
Yeah,
later, you can just write
absolutely.
it in. And hopefully we'll be able to like revisit this during some of the later sessions, like this afternoon. Just real quick on seaborne diseases, Elizabeth is gonna cover this in more depth. But as a seed producer, like what protocols do we use for seaborne diseases? One is trying to be educated about what the potential diseases are, getting out there, walking through the crops, looking for disease problems. So scouting, disease testing. Virginia Tech does free disease testing, so we send samples into them pretty often. Then hot water seed treatment is a tool that we use kind of preventatively whenever we get in seeds. Any nightshades or brassica seeds, we'll hot water treat them so that we don't end up with seed crops that have seaborne diseases in them. Fermentation controls a lot of seaborne diseases, and crop rotation, sanitation practices like you would use on any organic farm is also important. And again, I think there's a lot more work to be done.
Edmund, is there a excellent controlled study complete document of which diseases, bacterial, viral, fungal are and aren't seaborne? Because I've had a lot of trouble finding the definitive list that is well researched and everybody agrees on. But if you Google it,
Yeah.
this is seaborne, this isn't seaborne, or nobody talks about whether it's bacterial, spot is or isn't. And that's one of the gaps, I think, is really understanding.
So I think I'm gonna talk about that a little bit.
Excellent.
One resource that may or may not be definitive, but there's a good appendix at the end of John Navazio's Organic Seed Grower that has kind of a list of lots of different species and lots of different diseases, and sort of, I think he categorizes them as sort of like low, high, medium risk of being seaborne diseases.
I'm also interested in a sort of like more focused list for what does Southeast seed growers need to look out for and do. Like what's a sort of kind of simplified protocol for how we can address seaborne disease, which ones?
Yep.
What can you hot water treat, what can't you hot water treat, stuff like that. Yeah,
I had a question about steam treating.
yeah,
I think high mowing does.
yeah.
Is anybody else doing that, and what kind of how prohibitive or fancy is the equipment required? It sounded like a kind of a less damaging process in terms of how much of your seed ends up killing, but I don't know that much about it.
Yeah,
I have a suggestion, which is that maybe we hold questions until after more
Yeah.
presenters
Sorry.
go, and then we can all
Yeah.
answer.
No, we're capturing all these.
Sounds great.
yeah, okay. I think I'm gonna hand it off to Elizabeth.